It was one of the year's best attended businessmen's lunches, reflecting the broad community interest in the honeysuckle project. Robert Zulo told the gathering he hoped to have an initial draft plan on public display as early as July, but he was unable to elaborate on exactly what would eventually replace the disused goods yard.
We're not physically designing buildings, as some people seem to think. It's actually a much broader approach than that. And at the end of the day, our diagrams aren't going to have buildings as such. It's really it's almost a control plane that then is used by the development community to run with their own projects.
Mr Zulo believes the site represents the best opportunity for waterfront redevelopment in the country, but says it won't be a strictly commercial project. With about 60 hectares to work with, residential areas will be incorporated and even suggestions for homeless youth accommodation are being considered.
There may be areas on the site that could be used for that sort of use, but it may not be necessarily the commercial area. There are lots of... It's a big area, and the question is, how do you split the area up in a logical way so that the uses don't counteract each other, but in fact enhance each other?
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
This seemingly harmless little grub is proving more than a handful for the wine industry. It's an early stage of the fig longicorn beetle, an insect which has infested 40% of the lower hunter.
There was significant drop in production in the areas that were infested, and because of that we had to find a way to control the beetle before the vineyards became only marginally productive.
Scientist Merrily Pettit and her partner have been working on biological controls for the beetle, but means such as releasing sex hormones to lure male beetles away or introducing parasitic worms to eat the bugs have had little effect.
And the responses we're getting, the results we're getting are just simply going nowhere.
At a special seminar at Pecolbin this week, 180 wine growers came to find out the latest in the beetle battle. Merrily Pettit says programs on new chemical sprays are keeping the fig longicorn in check and offer the only hope for the industry. History shows the beetle was controlled with DDT and dieldrin. However, these chemicals were banned from use in the early 80s.
The show is about Acropolis Now, the cafe, as people have seen it on TV, and it's a really fun 1.5 hours of kind of like cabaret style entertainment as opposed to the TV show. The story is there's a talent contest in the first half of Acropolis Now Live, and all the characters take part in that talent contest to see who's going to win the trip to Mount Jiggy Jiggy. And Mount Jiggy Jiggy is a mountain. It's Aboriginal for
What's Haymanaro about?
Hey Monaro is Jim singing about the only thing in his life that he loves, and that is his Monaro.
February 1988 was the last time the Falcons had a win over Eastside, and tonight they will find the going tough as they try to rectify an 8-15 win-loss record with the Southerners. Both teams are coming off losses in Week 5 of the NBL, and for the Spectres to climb back to the top, this is a must weekend on the road.
If we're as good as people say we are, we're going to have to show it this weekend, because if we split or lose 2 this weekend, we're in deep trouble.
And for the flamboyant Gorgian, who took the Spectres to second spot after home and away matches last year, the Falcons at the Ken Booth Forum are a real worry.
Everybody's waiting for them to explode. When Jerry Everett, Michael Johnson and Al Green, that Bullock, when that group gets going, there's going to be an explosion, and you're just praying it doesn't happen when you're playing.
A change of luck must be just around the corner for the Falcons, as in the past couple of matches against Adelaide and Melbourne, the ball just wouldn't drop in the hole no matter how hard they tried. The firepower that coach Ken Cole has at his disposal is awesome, and if they can click, they have the potential to beat anyone in the league. And this week, work has been solid in an attempt to get the Falcons back on track.
We worked on our transition where we found that in at least one of the quarters, whether we get a little bit tired or whether we have to make some more substitutions, is that we're not getting back as quickly on defence as we should. And we worked very hard on that, because Eastside will definitely push the ball at us.
In March last year, the Camberwell Company was granted a lease to mine this area of land about 10 kilometres northwest of Singleton. In just a year, construction of the mine has taken place, possibly the speediest mine development ever in New South Wales.
And it is, as Mr Razaki said, probably, if not a world record, in fact it's almost certainly not a world record, but it's pretty close to a New South Wales and Australian record, that from go to woe, this process has taken less than 2 years.
This trainload of coal is the third to leave the mine and makes up the first shipment of coal bound for Japan. In size, Camberwell is relatively small compared with other mines in the Hunter Valley, but it is unique in other aspects. It is one of the first mines to include international buyers as joint venture partners. Mitsubishi Material and Toyota Tsusho of Japan are part owners in the mine with the Henry Walker Group. This means the 1.5 million tonnes of coal produced each year will have a guaranteed overseas buyer.
We've found that with 50% Japanese involvement, it has opened us a lot of doors in Japan.
The mine has also reached a milestone in the area of industrial relations. Camberwell is the first single-union coal mine in New South Wales.
That led to the finalisation of a single-union agreement with the United Mine Workers. That was ratified at the end of January of this year. They cover all of the production and maintenance functions in the mine, and we believe that that's a great step forward for the coal industry.
Mr Greiner praised the initiatives reached by the Camberwell Company, but stressed that for the Hunter Valley to survive into the next century, traditional industries like coal and steel have to make way for other businesses.
There needs to be a diversification. The most obvious area is tourism, and I think tourism has got tremendous potential, not only the existing areas but the rest of them. And now I've really got to go.
Okay, thank you.
Today's rain is the first significant fall in the area since January, but the Upper Hunter is still waiting for more. Ironically, while farmers were praying for rain up the valley, some were cursing it on the coast, where it interrupted the loading of a vitally important beef shipment to the United States. 600 tonnes of frozen beef are bound for Philadelphia aboard the Spring Bee on a trial export basis. The shipment is the biggest ever to leave the port and represents an important new export opportunity. The trial follows talks between the Hunter Ports Authority and the Australian Livestock Corporation. New trade opportunities should open with the construction of a cool store in Newcastle area to support the beef export industry.
At the end of that second quarter to
know what I'm doing a bit better this year. I've been refining it all along, and I picked up. Yeah, that's a Pacific there. There's another big one there. These are all plate size now.
Bob Roberts' zealous election campaign team has been wrapped over the knuckles by the Electoral Office. His political posters were attached to telegraph poles and on trees throughout the Cessnock electorate.
Subsequent to them being nailed up on the trees, I was informed of it.
Election posters are only allowed to be displayed on private property, and Mr Roberts' breach of the rules has raised the ire of the Labor candidate Stan Neely.
And I was advised there on that occasion that they were prohibited to be on telegraph poles. And I presume that same information was given to all other candidates, and the others seem to have abided it, but most certainly the Liberal Party don't seem to have taken any notice whatsoever.
So what is Mr Roberts' attitude to visual pollution?
Provided the things are taken down and not left up there indefinitely, I think people do see them during election time and they expect to see them.
After being advised that he had contravened the Act, Bob Roberts has pulled down the offending posters. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Tony Lawrence was delivering the keynote address to hundreds of management, technical and service representatives of coal producers from around the nation. Mr Lawrence said traditionally there's little sympathy for the coal industry and little Australian investment because people here greedily want only short-term gain.
The fact is that the Australian investing public are wimps and have no faith in the future of our great industry.
Bankers were criticised for being scared to take risks and governments for bowing to sectional interests. But Mr Lawrence saved his sharpest vitriol for the Greens.
The mining industry is one of the few sources of wealth generation for the country as a whole. And we are beset by environmentalists who would be happiest to see no mining at all. May they freeze to death in the dark.
That out of the way, Mr Lawrence set the tone for the 4 days of talks, getting greater yields of higher quality coal from the available resources.
The demand for clean coal technology by the consumers in response to demands for a better environment emphasises the needs for Australian coal producers to become leaders in this field.
Preparation, or coal washing as it was once called, is the largely forgotten side of the coal industry, giving way to extraction, transport and export. Until Thursday, these delegates will be highlighting the importance of coal treatment to the efficiency of an industry vital to Australia's economic health, our largest single export commodity worth $6 billion a year.
For ANL, the 8,500-tonne Sea Road Tamer is the last vessel to be constructed at Carrington Slipways before the gates are padlocked. Despite the shadow of unemployment looming at the yard, company spokesman Graham Tate says the 145 employees retained to finish the ship had done an extraordinary job. The Sea Road Tamer was towed down the Hunter River this morning to undergo final painting and inspection at Forjarks, but those plans were thrown off keel when the ship could not be docked, because 250 Forjarks employees had voted to continue their strike for a $12 a week pay rise as part of the wage accord Mark 6. Later in the day, Forjarks management and the Metal and Engineering Workers Union reached an agreement for the employees to receive the extra $12, and they're expected to be back on the job tomorrow. Dockyard owner Stephen Forjarks said he'd been prepared to give the pay rise to the Metal Workers Union, but he'd had no alternative but to also give the extra $12 to the painters and dockers to get his company operating again. Despite the disruption, the Sea Road Tamer should be ready for sea trials by the end of next month, and as that deadline approaches, workers at Carrington Slipways will be progressively laid off.
Against a very slick outfit in the Eastside Spectres, the Falcons compounded recent problems by turning in a shocker, soundly beaten by 33 points. Captain Al Green called all the players together this morning to try to find out what's gone wrong after the encouraging start to the season.
The guys let their feelings out, and they felt on certain areas we need to work on. I think we have an A plan, but we don't have a B plan. So I think the A and B plan is what we're going to do now, and then we're going to throw in a little C as well. So I think that's the most important thing for us right now.
And any rift between the playing roster and the coaching staff was quickly dismissed.
No problem in that department. It's just I think the players have to, when they're on the court, they have to play. Whatever happens with the coaching staff, off the court happens off the court. But once we're on the court, it's our job. People pay money to come see us play, and we got to give them a money's worth.
For the man in the hot seat, Coach Ken Cole, who now has a Newcastle record of 25 wins and 56 losses since 1988, he feels the blame should be shared.
I'm the coach of the team, it's my responsibility, but sooner or later players have got to start carefully examining what they're doing. You can only create the opportunity to a certain level, and then players have got to take it upon themselves, and that's from the senior players all the way through the team.
Trying to find solutions is the main goal leading up to this weekend's match with the Illawarra Hawks, and that involves a major change in direction, teamwork.
Over the last 2 or 3 games there's been far too much individualistic play, and from a coaching point of view I sit there and you talk about it, and every time out you make the change. You talk before the game, you talk right through the week about it, you make whatever changes you have to, and when it still doesn't necessarily alter, you really are at a loss about how necessarily to change it. I've always thought that you change things by working harder.
The institutions now, and those with investing money, are investing their funds overseas. If you look at the superannuation fund managers report, you see a major amount of our local funds are going to overseas stock. So when you look for investment funds in the coal industry, the only place to find it is from foreign sources.
And why are the foreigners therefore so interested in being involved, if we are not?
They can see the future for coal, they can see the need for energy requirements, and they can see how well Australia is placed in the coal industry. In Australia, we don't seem to recognise our own great industry.
Well, this is a conference on coal preparation. How important is investment in that aspect of the industry?
Well, the great need these days is for clean coal and clean coal technology. The developing countries have a great need for that, as well as the developed countries. Those suppliers who can produce with their good coal techniques for suitably burning the coal in a clean manner will help to sell their coal. And we need to keep up with world technology. It starts with coal preparation.
Speaking of investment, at the moment we have, of course, the story going on of CRA's bid to take over coal and allied. What ideas do you have on that?
Well, it's interesting. If coal and allied is worth $8.50 to CRA, it surely must be worth $8.50 to the current investors in coal and allied. I find it strange to see how the assets would change hands. I don't see any added value in moving from one company to another.
Well, how do you see the future of the coal industry? In Australia, it's had a turbulent past. How do you see the future?
More turbulence in the future. And unless we can get Australians to invest Australian money in the industry, it'll move more and more to offshore ownership.
Well, the Australian coal industry has had a turbulent past in several aspects, including industrial relations. How do you see the future there?
I think the industrial relations position has improved enormously. There's a realisation from both unions and the management of the realities of the industry. I think the industry has been plagued by bad management in the past, and it's been plagued also by rapacious sections of the union. So there are faults on both sides, but I can definitely see improvements. I can particularly see improvements in individual mines.
Well, we're producing more coal with fewer mine owners. There is a rationalisation going on. Just how far can that go?
It goes into rationalisation, then it drops out. You see mines being dropped off from the large groups, being picked up by entrepreneurial groups and regenerated. I think it's a constantly evolving industry.
Well, the coal industry internationally is very competitive. How do you see Australia's future overall in the mining industry?
I think it's a good future, but we certainly need to produce coal cleverly we need to prepare it cleverly, and we need to take every advantage we have with our natural resource.
The workshop contained hundreds of motorcycle parts, cars and boats. Firemen say the blaze was fuelled by oil products stored on the premises. Fire investigators are checking a theory that the lock on a roller door had been cut before they arrived at 8 p.m. It's suspected that a motorcycle stolen from the building shortly before the fire could provide a clue. In the meantime, factory owner Malcolm Bailey says the damage bill may run to 6 figures with the destruction of several rare vintage motorcycles.
This is the machine Coal and Allied believes could hold the key to the long-term viability of underground mining. Not satisfied with the performance of imported American models, company engineers designed their own. This prototype will begin operating at the Wallara colliery tomorrow, with another 2 to be delivered within 3 months. The company expects their introduction to boost productivity by up to 30% and increase job security for its 215 employees.
It certainly does enhance the long-term viability of the mine and hence the viability of employing the people we got here.
Built by the Sydney-based manufacturer Bliss Fox, another 2 continuous miners will soon be installed at the Chain Valley colliery, and the company hopes the all-Australian technology will eventually win national and international recognition.
We certainly as a company would like to think that we could export these miners overseas, possibly Southeast Asia, etc.
Confident of expanding your role in the domestic market as well?
Certainly, that was the aim of developing this piece of equipment.
About 600 people greeted the Minister for Business and Consumer Affairs.
Let me say right at the outset that it is not the withdrawal of the payroll tax subsidy that will cause any employment in this region. What will cause unemployment is the heavy taxation, the high interest rates and the policies of the federal government, which are really the cause of what's happening.
The state government once helped country manufacturers with a 7% tax rebate on firms employing more than 27 people and with a payroll of more than $500,000. This helped them to be competitive with city industries. Last year, the government tried to have the rebate withdrawn, but this was blocked by the upper house. Since then, the government has altered the procedures, making it difficult for country companies to interpret the ruling.
They have forgotten people in country New South Wales. They have forgotten that we need jobs. They have forgotten that without jobs, country towns die.
Chairman of the country manufacturers, David Kerr, believes the Manning is a model for small manufacturing in rural areas. Industries there employ up to 300 people and the annual payroll is about $21 million. Mr Kerr says the withdrawal of the tax incentive would place country manufacturers at a disadvantage.